All right, I think we are about ready to begin. I want to say good morning and good afternoon to everyone on the East Coast. I want to thank everyone who's attending. We have another great turnout for our latest webinar in the NIMBL Lecture Series, Scope and Effort Analyzer, your guide to an efficient and supported SAP landscape. I'm Jake Asbart, part of the NIMBL marketing team. A little bit about us. We are SAP technologists and SAP ecosystem thought leaders. Our consulting business, which is 50% of our work, delivers SAP projects both technical and functional, while our Denver-based SAP managed services, the other 50%, supports both Fortune 1000 and Midmarket 24/7 across 20-plus SAP skill sets. While our projects tend to be technical in nature, HANA, UX, Solution Manager, we likewise provide deliverable-based. And here is a quick list of the services that we offer. Obviously, today we will be focusing on Scope and Effort Analyzer. We'll be touching on a little bit of Solman 7.2 and a little bit of S4HANA. And here are a list of some of the customers that we work with. Just a couple of housekeeping issues. We want to be able to answer as many questions as possible. So if you take a look at the chat box in the lower left, feel free to ask questions, and our presenter, Rob Kelley, will answer them at the end of the presentation. Also, if you have any comments, feel free to chat those and type those in as well too. So as mentioned, our speaker today is Rob Kelley. Rob is an SAP technologist specializing, within the SAP NetWeaver and infrastructure realm. He has got over 15 years of IT architecture, system design, and infrastructure administration expertise. He's passionate about SAP technology, certified SAP OSDB migration consultant, Solman guru, and NetWeaver administrator, and years of admin experience, networking, and system architecture as well. Before we start, we want to give Rob a lay of the land as to who is joining us and what your particular needs are, so he may adjust his presentation accordingly. So we're going to start off with a quick poll question, a couple poll questions. The first is, what is your current S4HANA schedule? Are you looking to move to S4HANA in 0 to 3 months, 3 to 6 months, 6 months to 1 year, or it is not currently on your schedule? We'll give people a little bit of time to fill those in. Looks like some people it's not on their schedule, and most people it's going to be 6 to 12 months. All right, so let's move on to the next question. And your upgrade schedule to Solution Manager 7.2, what does that look like for you or your company? Is that going to be 0 to 3 months, 3 to 6 months, 6 to 12 months, or it's not on our schedule? I'd imagine it's on most people's schedule, and it looks like a lot of people are going to be doing that within the year as well as 0 to 3 months. All right, at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Rob. Rob, go ahead and take it away.
Well, hello, everybody. As you said, Rob Kelley. One thing you forgot to mention is that I'm also HANA certified administration and HANA install for TDIs. So any of the migration and HANA needs, I can provide that for you. So today what we're going to look at is over the past year, it seems like everybody's been migrating hardware. And with the hardware migration to new hardware and new operating systems, new databases, typically there's an upgrade in the process as well. It just makes sense to not only upgrade, but to also get your SAP landscape supported with the latest support packs. EHP 8 is out. So now when you go to 7.5, anybody who's out there that's non-Unicode, SAP's stuck a stake in the sand and says that you're not going to be able to go to 7.5 unless you're Unicode. So we've been doing lots of conversions, lots of Unicode still, believe it or not. So what we want to do is we want to kind of look at what does it take to do an upgrade, and what's the fear? How do we lessen the fear? How do we lessen the impact to doing an upgrade? Well, Solution Manager, since SP11, come out with a really great tool. It goes out there and it competes against some of the other spaces that does test management and change management, what happens in your system. Well, SAP in Solution Manager 7.1, SP11, or higher, they come out with a really good tool called Scope and Effort Analyzer. The great thing about Scope and Effort Analyzer is it analyzes what your system does. You don't have to send data off-site. You don't have to wait for long periods of time to get your results back. In fact, you could delete your session and rerun it. You could run it once a week if you choose. You could run it as many times as you want. Another thing is that if you have enterprise maintenance, it comes free. So how do we get Scope and Effort Analyzer? Well, prerequisites, 7.1 or higher. The higher you go, the easier it is. 7.1 SP14 is easier than 11. You have less notes to install, of course. So sometimes you have to take that in consideration. Is it easier for me to install all of the notes and prerequisites in my managed system, or is it easier just to upgrade my Solution Manager system? Another thing that we have to do is you have to have your foundation built. A lot of times when we go into a place, we have a foundation that is somewhat built, but it's not completely built. There's holes in the brick. And once you have a hole in the mortar, when you get later on in the field and you try to do some technical items on the Solution Manager, the foundation will crumble. We have to go back to the beginning. So what we want to do is make sure that the system preparation is completed successfully. When I say completed successfully, a lot of times we'll go in and people will say manually completed just to get the green light. That's not completed successfully. That's skipping a step. So we catch that later on. So it's better to work through the problems in system prep and get it all done correctly. Right after you do system prep, we need basic configuration completed. You need the users created. We need all that done successfully. Once that is done, you'll need to do managed system configuration on all systems in scope. Okay, all systems. So, you know, we're gonna do a upgrade on development and the sandbox and QA, and probably going to do 2 upgrades on the sandbox. You know, the first upgrade, we'll go through, we'll see, hey, look, this is what's changed. We'll do all of our SPAL mediation. We'll do the upgrade again, test all of our transports, and make sure that the upgrade was great before we ever even touch a QA system. So, that being said, all systems in scope should be configured. You have to run Maintenance Planner. If all of you are using Maintenance Optimizer, just remember it is gone. It's going to be dead. So just get used to using Maintenance Planner. It's much easier to use. So once you have all your systems managed, then you can continue. Now what we want to do is we want to activate UPL data, usage and procedure logging. It's a pretty cool tool. So what it does is it looks at what is being used in your production environment by your users all day, and it logs it. It writes it to a temp table that's stored for 14 days on your system, and it goes to 999 depth of what the user is doing. So it encompasses everything. Unlike STO3N, that's just kind of a linear view, we get this data, and we can store it for 14 days on the managed system. 14 days isn't a very long time. But Solution Manager, what it does is nightly it goes out, it grabs that data, and it stores in its BW, in its business warehouse. And that business warehouse is aggregated across the year. So you can have a year or more of data, UPL data, stored in your Solution Manager. So when you do an upgrade, you will have a year-end close. You will have a period close. You will have a month-end close. Great stuff, right? So we know what's tested. I mean, we know it's used, how it's used, user exits, function modules, tables, custom subroutines, whatever we have. We know how it's being used, and we also know when it's being used. And it's all covered when we do the upgrade, right? So to get this usage and procedure logging, what we need to do is we need to go through Solution Manager custom code management steps, right? In Soulman Workcenter, we'll show it to you a little bit later. In fact, you're lucky today because instead of using the 7.1 slides, I'm using the 7.2 slides, so you can see what it is, what it looks like. Okay? So once you have your Solution Manager set up, you go through custom code. Once you get through custom code, you go through steps 1 through 6.3. There's a lot of prereqs. It does tests, it does checks, it makes sure everything is active. But at the end of the day, all we want to do is we want to activate 3 jobs, set them to run on your production system, and those will run. And then we want to set a job on the Solution Manager system that runs and pulls that data and populates the cubes, right? One of the most important things for Maintenance Planner, also for MOPS in the old days, is that you need to have your LMDB successfully populated, and everything must be verified. You must do verification checks. And if those verification checks fail, you have to resolve them. Otherwise, you're going to continually, as I've seen, continually have issues with upgrades and incompatible components and those sort of things. So you want to make sure that that is good. So you want to make sure that your maintenance optimizer works for the system in scope. We also want to make sure that your maintenance planner, you've gone through maintenance planner, you've activated the content, you've verified the content, and that it's constantly being uploaded. Also, you want to make sure in your environment that your STPI versions are up to date. You just need to keep those up because it does new security, it does all kinds of new reporting and everything. So the latest, greatest STPI, Solution Manager tools you have is the greatest. So those are your prerequisites just to start it. Sounds like a lot, but it's really not. I bet most of you already have all these prerequisites. So what is scope and effort analyzer at a high level? So it basically helps the development manager. The development manager can come in and quickly identify custom code that has been impacted by a modification. Then they could see where it is, what the adjustments and what adjustments are necessary for your SAP landscape. So sometimes there's tables change and function modules change, and we need to know what has changed that will impact my custom code. That will tell the development manager where the application component hierarchy is, MM, SO, SD, whatever, wherever it's at, so they can know what expert they need to look at the development. And then we go to test management. Test management also does the same thing. It says, hey, look, we have 45 objects changing in MM that are custom that we need to look. So the test manager can say, okay, I need 4 people from material management. I need, I need 6 FICO people. And then they could get together and say, what are our test plan? What is our test scope? And then we could do, they could create test cases. They could do a test case, create it as a manual test. They log in, they see a change, they test it, they go through the document, they fill it out and test it as positive, they come back, say the test is positive, they have proof in the document, and then they can go out, right? We can also get sort of a detailed estimate of how long it's going to take to do the testing. Now, the optimization is the cool part. This is the cool part, right? So say one item changes in a table, all right? But VAO1, 2, 3, 4, XYZ, PDQ all touch that same table. Do you have to test every one of those T codes because one table changed? No. We test one and go on. It's test positive. So we don't have to test the same change on 16 different T codes. We just have to test it one time because if it changes, fine. If it works, great. If it needs to change, test it. So what does scope and analyzer do? It kind of creates transparency. So everybody, I know a lot of people here have done, what are we going to test? So we're going to do this upgrade. What are we going to test? I've seen the shotgun approach. Let's test our top 50 transactions. And then, we'll see how everything else goes. We also see Excel spreadsheets. Let's test this. Everything we possibly can. This also this creates transparency. So what happens is that you can say, you know what, we've tested this, and according to the tool, this table was changed, and it shouldn't impact these 6 other items. So it's been tested. We know that it works. So based on that, we can continue on without any problems. The transparency is who tested it, when did they test it, and what was the results. You have it stored in a document, in a test plan, and you know it was positive, when it was tested, and when it was positive. So, you could also reduce risks of development changes. What's changed in this SAP landscape? What have we changed? What do we use? And, how's it going to impact us? You can also kind of estimate what it's going to cost to do your project, just because we can do a guess. So say you have amazing ABOPer, and a development's going to take an hour and a half per object, and there's 10 objects. So it gives you an estimated time. Now, are those times going to be 100% accurate? No, but it will give you an idea. It'll give you an idea of what the cost and what the effort is going to be. You can also, again, like I said, reduce the effort. So instead of testing 50 objects that touch the same table 50 times, instead of testing 50 times, you test it once. Saves a lot of time. You can also do test automation, and test automation now in 7.2 is a little bit different than in 7.1. 7.2, it's a lot more mature. HPLM is going away. A lot, you're not getting the licenses. You just use CBTA, automated testing scripts, and it's actually pretty cool. But that would be a whole nother presentation on its own, probably 2. All right, so let's talk about some of the big questions about usage and procedure logging. So this is all, you log everything that an end user does during the person's shift or during the day or whenever. You log every executed ABOP program to the 999 depth. So as deep as it goes, user exits, function modules, classes, methods, subroutines, smart forms, you name it, it collects it, right? So it collects that data. Then the next thing I get is, well, we have 3,000 people on here working. Will it have a negative impact on our performance? I have to date not seen any collection issue, any performance issue caused by UPL data. I've not. And I've seen this there's people on very large systems that collect this stuff daily. I've not seen it have a negative impact. This information is collected dynamically in the managed system. So I want everybody to know that it's actually working in the managed system where your users are. So it would be not a really good idea to put UPL logging in Dev or QA, because all you're going to see is what your developers do. You're going to get a lot of SE80 stuff. So we don't really want to see that. Maybe you do. I typically don't. So we only use this in production. Again, it helps close the gap in the workload statistics, much more granular than STO3N. STO3N, depending on what your storage policy is, 30 to 90 days, and it's gone, right? So it's good to use STO3N in firefighting cases when you have issues, but not really for your upgrade planning. So all this stuff is stored in statistics in Solution Manager BW, which allows on-demand analysis. So space consumption. Everybody asks me about the space consumption of UPL. UPL data is tiny. It stores 14 days worth of data in a temporary cube on the database. And it's overwritten after the 14th day. So it just overwrites, right? It pulls the data every night to Solution Manager. The total consumption is between 2 to 10 megabytes in a 14-day period. I've not seen it consume more than 10 megabytes. When UPL is activated on the managed system, the default move, the SAP, the Solution Manager, pulls that data from the managed system every night at midnight, 12:01. Pulls that data over, and then it uses it in its multi-cube layout. So it does an aggregation across the UPL data for day, month, year. Day, week, month, year. So what's the big deal about UPL? Why do we want it? Well, there's a thing called T-bombs, and I'm sure everybody on here has heard of technical bill of materials. Everything that you use to type a T code. Every possible thing that it uses, all the way to user exits, everything. Well, prior, what we would do is we would build what was called static T-bombs. And a static T-bomb is what SAP says this T code uses. It's not very deep. It's not very granular. So when you do this T-bombs, a lot of times you go back through and say, you know what? This is something that we use every day. Let's do a dynamic T-bomb. Most accurate, right? It basically records what a user does. You have them log in, run their job, do their daily job, and then once they're done, you exit out and it saves that data. So that's the most accurate T-bomb. UPL brought into the mix semi-dynamic. So the semi-dynamic are created extremely accurate. They're very accurate, all the way to 999 depth, right? So most of the time, semi-dynamic T-bombs are all that's needed. So also, so everybody knows, is that in the old days, in 7.1, we would create, when we did a scope and effort analysis, it would create a business blueprint for you. It would create a module-based blueprint of your system, and then UPL data would categorize it for you. In 7.2, you build your own solution documentation, and you use that to build your scope and effort analysis across. So, like I said, it builds a module-based blueprint, so you have all of your modules laid out, SO, SD, MM, etc. So here it is. This is what 7.2 looks like. I don't know if anybody's seen 7.2 before, but it's more, this is just a little snippet of it. It's more UI-based, prettier layout, more user-friendly, a lot easier to manipulate. So if you look at this system, how do we activate UPL data? This is basically activating UPL data in one system. What you need to do is you need to go to Solution Manager, your brand new 7.2 system, and you need to execute Soulman Setup. Nothing's changed. The only thing is the left nav and the right nav are more UI Fiori based. So on the left nav, you can see that I selected Custom Code Management. Then what you want to do is what I always forget to do is hit Edit. So Edit and Next. So now we're reading, you could read the first page. It's just a splash screen about the help and what you're about to do. You could highlight the, you hit Edit and hit Next, and then you could actually start configuring. So the first thing that you want to do, the first thing that it takes you to is a house cleaning page. Now, it's kind of strange if it brings you to the housekeeping page first, because 99% of the time it's going to be empty, because you're not going to have any UPL data. And you can see here that I'm storing UPL data for two systems, for an ECD system and an SML system, right? So you can see that I'm storing this data. Now later on, if you see nothing in this screen, don't worry about it. Come back to it. You can come back into it later and say, these are the weeks. These are what I want to save. This is the cleanup routine that I want for Solution Manager to do for BW. This is how long I want to keep these items. So when you first start this, there'll be nothing there, so we just skip on next to it. The next screen will allow you to create template users for admin, template user for display. I always create these because, you could create these templates and then you say, I need administrator. Here's a template. So you copy this to your SEA administrator, or you can have a display. You can say, hey, look, I want to make sure that the managers can see that everything is being completed and that, the test scripts are being allocated or whatever. And you can also create custom ones underneath this. We just typically use the templates. So now you want to define your system that you're going to upgrade. So you see we have an ECD system that's running on HANA. The configuration mode we did was full. The RFC status is good, and the auto-conf status is good. If any of these are red or yellow, you have a concern. I would go back and fix them. RFC is the biggest one. You need to have a TMW RFC created in your managed system configuration, and all those need to work. Also, sometimes it's good to have a trusted connection. If it's allowed, I like to do trusted as well. So if everything's green, we highlight the system and we hit next. Now we can see that it's going to ask us, what is our client RFC? So we see that ECD's client is 100, and it's our S4 1605 release baseline. So now we have our system. We highlighted it. We have a communication protocol going back to the system just to allocate the jobs. Then we want to do step 6. Step 6 is really simple. It's a multi-part step, right? So the first step is you check the note. The second step is you activate the extractors in the jobs, okay? So when we look at this, what this does is it goes out to the remote system and it says, hey, look, do you have all prerequisite notes? Is there anything that you need that is going to impact the UPL activation on your system. So if everything is good, it'll come through and it'll show up green. Now we get to the next step, and this is how we activate the in-analysis jobs on the managed system, right? So you can choose each one of these systems. You can go down to the bottom, click every one of those boxes, and hit Schedule Analysis, right? You could do the extractor activation as well. Click all the buttons and hit Activate Extractors. You can do the same thing with the collectors. Here, you highlight all of them and hit Activate Collectors, or you could simply just do it from the top level. Activate Data Collection Groups after you select all of them, and we'll create all these jobs to run in the managed system. And then once you've activated it, everything's green, you hit Next and you complete it. Now here's what 7.2 looks like. You see it's a little bit different, right? So now we want to look at the scope and effort analysis that we created. Okay, so we go into Solution Manager Work Center, and you see all the Fiori tiles, UI5 tiles. Before you start your scope and effort analysis, you need to go up to Maintenance Planner and create an upgrade. Just like you do in MOPS, you go through it and you get the PDF, right? You get the file so you are ready to do the upgrade. You need that later on. So what we're going to do is within the side tile, we're going to do a drop down, and we're going to choose the Test Management Suite. Within this Test Management Suite, you'll see the Scope and Effort Analyzer tile. You'll select that tile. Now that we're in a tile, we're going to create a new analysis. You just hit the New button with the little star by the paper, and it'll bring a pop-up here, and we're going to select. We're going to name our analysis. We're going to create analysis. We're going to call it a demo, right? We're going to select our extended system. We're going to call it ECD, right? And we're looking at the product version. We're going to upgrade SAP ERP 6. And then earlier, I went through and I created a maintenance planner, and it already pulled it down to the transaction ID. So I selected this maintenance planner ID, and then I just hit OK. Now it's going to ask us to select the systems for analysis. So the system for analysis. So so the very first one, specify technical system to read custom developments from. You get a lot of people who ask us, why don't we just look at our development system for this? That's where our custom developments live. I say, how many here have a development system that have items that have not gone to production? Some may never ever even go to production. Some of them are orphans just stuck in dev. Why would you want to worry about possible developments that are never in production? So me personally, I specify the production system for my developments because I only care what custom developments are in my production environment that I'm going to upgrade. As you can see, this is a lab environment. I have one system. It's not a 3-tier landscape. So I'm using ECD. Don't come back and look at this and think that your development system is the one you need to put there. Please put a check mark, write a note, put a sticky tab on it somewhere that says use production system or where I care my developments are. The next thing is where do we want to read our usage statistics from? Now, if we're updating production, we want to read our usage statistics from production. So say you're doing a QA system, right? Probably don't even have UPL data activated, to be honest with you. Even if you're doing a QA system, read the usage statistics from production. Why? Because it's just going to tell us what people are using and it'll give you a better idea of testing. Everything in here is supposed to be for a production upgrade. But sometimes you want to test a QA system, you can. Another thing that we want to do is specify our technical system that is used for test scope optimization. Now earlier we discussed how UPL data does not impact performance. Scope and effort analysis, when it's building T-bombs, will impact performance. It will definitely have an impact. It is I mean, it is a grind, right? So what we want to do is we want to specify a system where that has power, that we're going to do this manipulation of data. We're going to create these T-bombs. Manipulation of data is the wrong word. We're going to create these T-bombs. So we think about it. So our development systems are typically pretty small, and they don't, older hardware, maybe not as much oomph as our production, not even close, right? In our production system, we don't want to impact anything during the day, right? So we want to just calm down and not use production. We want to have a great day. We don't want to impact production, get a phone call saying, hey, look, our production's slow. Why is it happening? And you have to kill the jobs. So what we do is we use QA. QA is typically very similar to production in hardware and power, and it has really typically not very many users on it. So we want to use that QA system to do all of our hard work, all of our heavy lifting. So always, specify the technical system that's been managed in your system, has RFCs, and can handle the capacity of creating T-bombs. One thing that I wanted to tell everybody is that T-bombs are a great thing, but T-bombs are very huge. T-bombs are very big items. So we want to make sure that if you do 5 or 6 SEA runs and you're recreating T-bombs all the time, your system's going to get bigger than your ERP system because it's storing all this data. Just make sure that if you're using T-bombs and you run a test and you're not going to use those T-bombs anymore, go ahead and go into a T-bomb utility and wipe them out. Make sure you set up T-bomb obsolescence checks to make sure that your T-bombs aren't obsolete and that they're updated on a regular basis. If something's changed, of course, you want to make sure that the T-bomb is changed as well. So here is where it gets a little bit different. In the old solution manager, we'd go through and it would create a documentation module based for you. Here we've already created it and we're going to just select it. So you have a document template. So everybody hopefully is going to go through when they go to 7.2, realize the amazing capabilities of the solution documentation. And that way they're going to have all their systems documented in a modular form. That way, when somebody gets hired and they're in a week's worth of training and they're released and Monday morning they come in to do their job and they can't remember how to do this custom job, they can go right back into the help within the GUI, click on the help, goes to the solution manager, read the documentation on how to run that T-code. So they have the documentation at their fingertips. So everybody think about doing solution documentation. It is well worth the effort and time involved. So now we can specify the test scope. So this is if you have an automated testing tool, if you're using SAP, if you have if you're using CBTA, what the coverage is, everything. All this stuff is changeable later. You can change this later. You can manipulate this data in the process tab much later. So then the final step is let's review the analysis before we start it. Make sure that we have our system set up correctly. Make sure we didn't mistakenly put production in the area we want to build all the T-bombs, because otherwise we're going to have a bad afternoon. And then we just hit Start Analysis. So the analysis takes 4 to 8 hours to run. That's the typical. That's the average. I've seen it run for 14 to 18 hours on very, very large systems. It just depends. But typically, I would say the average is 4 to 8 hours. What happens when it's done is it calculates all the information, and you get a summary page. And you can drill down into each one of these. Today, we're not going to drill down into all of these items. We're just going to do a high-level overview. You can see as a summary of what's changed, where it's changed, and what's going to be impacted. Just a high-level summary. Then on the next page, we're going to look at modification effort. So this is spoil remediation, what it's going to take, what are we going to do. There's another really cool tool called CDMC, Custom Development Work Center, where you can come in and you could actually have everything that's changed with the button, red light. It's not a very sexy interface, but you can do remote compare. You can do all those cool things, and it's also in Solution Manager as well. It's just called CDMC, and it's under T code CNV_CDMC. And you can also create an analysis for just custom developments on their own. This is just more of a high-level overview tool, so you can see the manager can come in and say, okay, I'm going to take, it's going to take 30 or 300 hours to do this development work, and most of it's going to be in MM. This is just a high-level overview. This can get into the nuts and bolts and tell you what's changed, but you want to use the CDMC tool. Also, there's changing analysis. If anybody's done an upgrade, you have a change analysis tool also that we should do a webinar on. And what that does is it looks at all custom code that is in your production environment that's not used anymore. And you can create a transport, and it goes and removes all that garbage from production, so it's a little bit more lean. Another topic for another day, but it's another tool to think about. So you come in here and you can see, I know these are really hard to see, but you can see that the effort and what it's going to take and where the changes are going to be. You can also see that in the test management window, you can see what test management is going to take, how much testing, what's automated. You can come in here, you can add test documents, you can do all kinds of cool things within this little slide. And then at the bottom you can see more of what test case, how long it's going to take, estimated effort, and those sort of things. Again, just another test management. So this screen is like 3 levels deep, and if you go down into it, you can see where and what the impact is. And then the final screen is if you look at your distribution area of your component hierarchy, BC is going to be high, basis components. So, if you haven't done a lot of custom development in your basis components, probably not going to spend a lot of time testing there, but you're going to look at stuff, right? So, wherever your major impacts are, you can see and kind of get a best guess, get the best idea of where to test, what to test, and how to officially test it. So,
all right. So that was the overview of Scope and Effort Analyzer. Before we get to the Q&A, we have a lot of questions that have been posed to Rob. We want to ask you if you'd like to receive some more information on Scope and Effort Analyzer. We would be happy at NIMBL to send you some, and Rob would be happy to discuss any questions that you have beyond this webinar on Scope and Effort Analyzer. Let people fill in. I do want to mention, as Rob did on Solution Manager 7.2, Jeremy Swoboda, one of our leads, has just recently published Upgrading to SAP Solution Manager 7.2. I wanted to offer everybody a promotional code, which you can see at the bottom if you're looking for that. And another question, we had some questions on whether or not everybody would receive the webinar. You will. Everybody will receive a fully edited version of the webinar within the next 24 to 48 hours. So if you missed any slides, don't worry. You will receive your own copy of it as well, too. And under the category of Solution Manager 7.2, are you interested in setting up a hands-on demo on Solution Manager 7.2? I know a lot of people are. We've been doing it across the country as far as presentations and webinars. So if you are interested, just let us know, and we will get back to you on 7.2.
One of the amazing things is with this hands-on demo is that we will actually let you sign in where you're at. You don't have to come here. You don't have to go anywhere. You just can do it from your desk. You can do it from home. You can sign in, and we can run through, and you can just see what 7.2 looks like. You could look at the test management piece. You could look at the solution documentation piece. You can look at all kinds of stuff, and it's free. And it's at your house, and we'll sit in and we'll have a webinar and we'll just talk and we'll say, this is what we're doing. You'll get your own Solution Manager system, log into it by yourself, and do some testing. It's a great opportunity.
All right, so let's get to the Q&A. First one's going to be from Debbie, which is, what is the cost of Scope and Effort Analyzer? Is it free?
It is free if you have enterprise maintenance. If you have standard maintenance, it's not. So it just depends on your licensing. So if you're licensed, if you have enterprise licensing, you're good to go.
All right. The next one is from Suzanne. When running Scope and Effort Analyzer analysis for EHP7 or EHP8, is it possible the analysis for business process hierarchy nodes picks up items that are not currently used in the production as per UPL? For instance, are new functions that need activation picked up? For this analysis, I guess they chose to generate ACH business blueprint.
Yeah. Everything that's so say you make a change and the next day they're using the change, the T-bomb, if you have your T-bomb set up right and you do the testing and you do the UPL data, it'll gather all the new business functions. Absolutely.
All right. And Eric has a question. Is there a recommended or good way to confirm that the UPL data is accurate or complete?
You know, there's a UPL code that you can use in your production system. It's I can't write. It's off the top of my head. I have it in my notes. You can run that, and you can see if the data is being collected and how it's being collected. And then what you have to do, honestly, is you collect the UPL data, and then you go into the T-bomb and you look at the information that's provided. To this date, I've never seen an incorrect UPL data that was collected. I've not. Another thing that I wanted to tell everybody, because we talked about switch framework. Once you do this, there's another tool that's called Business Process Change Analyzer. Now, everybody here, I'm telling you that I've found this happened before where something was changed and it caused an issue in production, but it wasn't broken in anywhere else. It was just broken in production. So any transport that comes through, you can do a business change impact analysis to say, I may be changing something in MM, but it impacts something in SD. It impacts something in FI. So we always now recommend doing a test on every transport, but you can also do a BPCA across the switch framework. So if you ever worry about what can I activate, what's going to impact, you can also do a BPCA across that. So BPCA is also under test management, and I highly recommend everybody to start getting familiar with it because it's an amazing tool to prevent system downtimes.
All right. Suzanne had actually a follow-up question. Did I understand that we should not use business blueprints to generate ACH hierarchy in Soulman 7.2? It won't be available, or is it not recommended?
Well, there's two ways. Remember the old days, in the IBIS days, you run the utility today. You still create the business documentation the same way, but scope and effort analysis doesn't create it automatically. That's what I was trying to say. So your business blueprinting is still done in 7.2 the same way through report.
Great. And Eric asks, a third-party product that we used in the past, Panaya, was able to look at custom security roles that would or could be impacted by upgrade, similar concept as with code. Have you heard of SEA having such a feature, or perhaps in the future?
Nope, not yet. I have not heard of that feature. It's a good one to take to John, though.
All right. Siva asks, is it possible for automatic code correction for affected objects?
Automatic code correction. Not that I know of. All
right. Kunil had a couple questions. How hard is it to migrate current Soulman 7.1 DB to 7.2 Soulman on HANA?
I love that. It's pretty easy, actually. It's a migration. It's like a DB migration. I find it really easy. The only thing is before we do migration upgrade to 7.2, if you're using any third-party add-on tools that are no longer supported in 7.2, you're going to have issues. So make sure that you're not using any third-party tools like Cisco's monitoring software or whatever, because that won't allow you to, well, you'll lose it, right? So you're going to lose it in the upgrade. So if you're using any third-party stuff that's not supported in 7.2, make sure you're aware of that and move on. If you're just using technical monitoring, nothing's impacted. Some of the way that documentation is created now is modular. So it depends on the company. A lot of times we do a fresh install, and a lot of times we upgrade. So, but migrating to HANA is very easy. It's just, I mean, it's to me, upgrading and migrating at the same time. Really, I don't charge any extra hours. It's upgrade, migration, or upgrade. It's the same amount of time.
All right, and we had a couple of people ask, does Soulman 2 come with HANA? 7.2, excuse me.
No, it's free. I mean, if you want to buy the appliance, you can. It comes, I mean, you can install it on HANA or ASE a lot of times. I see customers spending that money on ERP and BW and just doing ASE for Solution Manager. But yeah, you can install it on HANA.
And there's a follow-up from Kunil. If CCLM is already set up in 7.1 with the UPL extractors and data in BW cubes, is the upgrade path to Soulman 7.2 on HANA pretty straightforward?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, the data is not going to go anywhere. The UPL, the jobs are the same. You're not going to lose anything.
All right. Barry has a question. We have legacy methods for capturing business requirements and designs. We're interested in how organizations leverage Soulman for this purpose in managing LOE and change impact for our internal support and projects. Any future plans for this topic?
Yeah, we could do that. I mean, please, by all means, we do this all the time. And if you have a topic that you want us to cover, I mean, we're chefs. You know, we'll serve you what you want to eat. We do, you know, we're in the field all the time, and you know, my practice is upgrade, migration, HANA installs, and those sort of things. So I tend to generate my web content more to this, but we do all this documentation. So by all means, if you want to have a webinar or you want to discuss something like this, I mean, reach out and ask. I mean, we can definitely serve that.
And a follow-up to that from Barry is, can you confirm that Soulman 7.2 on-prem for ECC can fully migrate to cloud-hosted Soulman?
So it just, I mean, yes, it can, but I mean, is it going to be easy because of your, you know, your virtual network, your VPI? What, you know. Yeah, it can, but I mean the communication part. So how we use ours is fully in the cloud, right? So we communicate to on-prem and cloud all in one. But I'm the network guy, so I set up all the VPN rules. I set up the tunnel. I set up everything. So yes, absolutely it can, and it just depends on how you want to communicate and how much. I mean, yeah, absolutely it can.
Jimmy asks, what is the effort to get this set up? If you're already on 7.1, SP1.3, i.e. time frame or man hours. So I guess he's looking for scope.
For scope are we doing migration or do you want a fresh install? Because so that's one of the questions. So if you're not really using Solution Manager and you're just using it for MOPS, by all means, don't even bring it over. I mean, it's just a lot of junk data probably if you're just using it for maintenance optimizer like a lot of people. But if you're using it for documentation, you need to define a path because we have to activate that documentation. We have to define what gets moved over because the landscape, the way that the documentation is more modular, so it's changed quite a bit. We also, if you're just using it for technical monitoring, upgrade is the path to be. I mean, just do an upgrade to the system. But if you're not using it, like I said, it's probably cheaper and easier just to install new.
All right, let's see if Jimmy had a follow-up to that. All right, Siva asks, I understand that we use quality system to avoid issues in production for execution, but how do we get mostly used objects to be checked, which can be checked using production systems?
Mostly used objects so all we care about is the UPL data collects what your users are clicking, right? So what they're using. So that's the UPL data gets that data for you. That's the whole purpose of UPL, to get the data of what we don't care if they never hit any T code. If they don't ever hit it, I don't really care about it, and I don't want it in my test scope. I only care about all the items that people are using So yeah, UPL covers that.
Eric has a comment and a question. You need a quote-unquote appliance for HANA on Soulman 7.2. I thought HANA was much more open these days.
No, you don't need an appliance, but it's hard. It's expensive. I mean, HANA is going to be on your, you're going to, we can do a 128, right? You can do a 128 on-site TDI. Do the TDI installs. You don't have to roll in an appliance. Absolutely not. You could use what you have, but it is very open these days. They want you to use it. Typically what people do is they want their high dollar items to run HANA, and Solution Manager has always been a stepchild, right? So it always sits in the back, and it's typically on the oldest hardware, and it doesn't run anything. You could absolutely run it on HANA, and you could absolutely run it on a TDI setup. You could run it in the cloud. So HANA is very much more. I didn't want to confuse anybody. You do not need an appliance. I personally prefer TDI because I like control of my installs and basically my infrastructure. But either way, appliance is much easier. You just roll it in and update it, right? Plug it in.
All right. Brahma asks, are there any cleanup jobs for T-bombs?
Yeah, it's obsolescence check. There's a whole T-bomb utility. I don't have my thing up, but I can send that to you if you send an email to Jake or contact me at my email. I'll send you the cleanup job for the T-bombs, because absolutely you want to keep those clean. If you've run SEA 15 times and you have 15 sets of T-bomb, your system's going to be huge. You need to go in and delete those T-bombs. UPL data, I'm reading that there's cleanup for UPL data, right? So in that second tab in the screen, if you go back into the CDMC setup, you'll see the second screen, and that's where I define my cleanup criteria for my Solution Manager. Now, we don't have
sorry to cut you off. Kunal asks, you referenced the TDI. What is that?
Oh, sorry. That's Tailored Data Center for HANA. You used HANA approved equipment, and you can run HANA without buying an appliance. You can just run it on site. So UPL data real quick. UPL data is cleaned up only on Solution Manager because it's stored in the cubes. Production only stores it for 14 days. Overwrites 2 to 10 meg.
All right. Unless we have any other questions, that was a great Q&A. We want to thank everybody for participating. Give people a couple more seconds if they'd like to ask any more questions. If not, as I mentioned before, everybody will be receiving a fully edited version of this. You're welcome, Kunal. And at the end, when you log out, you'll be offered the opportunity to make some comments. Rob mentioned it as well. If you have any other topics you'd like for us to explore, whether it's continuing on Soulman or S4HANA or UX, basis, security, just write them in there. If you enjoyed the presentation, definitely let us know. If you had any critiques, we want to hear those as well. But certainly feel free to fill that out. And again, we want to thank Rob, definitely, for a great presentation, everybody for a great Q&A session. And we hope to see you at the next webinar. Everybody will be alerted as to what that topic is. On that note, thanks again, and everybody have a great, great weekend.
Thanks, everyone.